This week, bridging the divide. With one of the most divisive presidential elections in American history just days away, tensions are at record highs. Ballot boxes burned earlier this week in the Vancouver area.
No matter who you're voting for, that's your right.
The incident sparking a federal investigation as the direction of the country is set to be decided by millions of voters, many who've already cast their ballots. Eligible students here at River and across the nation participating in the American political process for the very first time. But as younger voters gain a political footing, will their voices help bridge the divide or deepen the rifts? That issue plus civic responsibility. What role should schools play in fostering student political exploration? Are our classrooms doing enough to empower the next generation of voters? And how can educators create a space for political discussions without swaying students' views? Joining me for this week's Rapid Roundtable are Washington LIAC Public Affairs Director Ashlye Triebes, World Themes and History teachers Tim Smith and Kassondra Young, and intern for Senator Ann Rivers, Abbie Pacuska. And finally, painting towards peace, the Ukrainian refugee student whose personal experiences in the conflict are fueling his artwork. Tyme Sisakvanich in downtown Vancouver, where the Politics exhibit offers a glimpse into the power of art as a vehicle for expression.
Я їх намалював, щоб показати, що в моїй країні трагедія, війна та
How this young artist's paintings are helping him heal and share his story one brushstroke at a time. Welcome to the conversation. It's the Rapids Report.
From CR News, this is the Rapids Report with Talan Collins.
This election is more than just a choice between two parties and two different candidates.
Every problem facing us can be solved, but now the fate of our nation is in your hands.
And a good Friday afternoon, and thank you for joining us as we begin a new season of the Rapids Report, just days out from what many are calling one of the most divisive elections in American history. And all of that polarization is putting Americans in a state of fear, skeptical about the effectiveness and threat posed to our democracy. A recent poll conducted by the New York Times in association with Siena College estimates that nearly 45% of voters feel that democracy does not do a good job representing the people. Pair that number with nearly 76% who feel that democracy is currently under threat, and it's evident why people feel the stakes of this election are so high. And with those perceived stakes has come a rise in intimidation efforts by domestic extremists. On Monday, the ballot box at Vancouver's Fisher's Landing Transit Center became the target of arson, leaving hundreds of ballots burned. Some of those local voters made their way to the Clark County Elections Office to vote in person.
My vote's important as the person who burned my ballot. And no matter who you're voting for, that's your right.
The incident drew national attention and sparked a federal investigation as local authorities continue to search for the suspect as of the time of this recording. Clark County Auditor Greg Kimsey explained that while firefighters salvaged some of those ballots, an exact count of those destroyed remains unknown. A replacement ballot box has been installed, and officials encourage anyone with doubts about their ballot status to reach out for confirmation. To track your vote, you can visit voteway.org. But the question remains, how did we get here, and how can we bridge the ever-growing political divide? In May, Washington State Lieutenant Governor Denny Heck joined me on set to discuss his role in that very question.
Our objective is to attempt to encourage more respectful discourse in the public square because in a pluralistic society, I don't know any other way we're ever going to solve problems if we can't figure out how to compromise with one another and stay true to our principles. And thirdly, when that's not attainable, and it isn't always, how to disagree better.
Heck told me how he believes we can accomplish that sentiment.
How important it is to view people with whom you disagree as human beings and not to what I call the other them, to treat them as or delegitimize them because they don't agree with you. And secondly, to always remember that for however many things you disagree on, if you work hard enough, you can find something that you can agree on and work toward together. And the beauty of that is, if you do it once, you now know you can do it twice, if not 3 times, if not 4 times.
One thing is clear: in an age of online radicalization, fear-mongering, and political extremism, it seems like nothing is getting done. But in a way, that is exactly the point. The American political system was designed to prevent any one party, person, or ideology from dictating the direction of our government. Our Constitution does not encourage collaboration, it necessitates it. Like the legislation it creates, approves, and interprets, the system itself is a compromise. Politics has always been and always will be messy, but a democracy offers us the opportunity to improve that, because we, the people, have the power to choose our future and to change it, as the Lieutenant Governor puts it, by learning to disagree better. Yet, amidst current polarization and political groundstanding, many of us are left wondering, how can our leaders bring us together to improve our future while staying committed to their principles? This is exactly what I challenged Governor Jay Inslee on during his visit to a group of local student advocates just a few weeks ago. With his commitment to tackling the issue of climate change, which he calls the, quote, most important thing in all our lives, he's had to work through the challenges of unifying diverse viewpoints as a new generation of voters emerges. While he may not have all the answers, Inslee was candid in his response, acknowledging both the impact and limitations of his own policies. In response to concerns over rising energy costs, one of the young advocates in attendance perhaps best summarized the viewpoint of many young voters who feel alienated by the nature of our political process. Vancouver iTech Academy senior Avery Hughes Davis tells CR News it's just a matter of the future. And we now turn to this week's Rapid Roundtable, where we'll dive into this generation's place in America's future, as well as the role of education on fostering student political exploration. Ashlye Triebes is the Director of Public Affairs for the state's Legislative Youth Advisory Council, as well as a member of Washington High School Democrats. Tim Smith is a World Themes history teacher, as well as Kassondra Young here at River. And Abbie Pacuska is a former intern for Republican State Senator Ann Rivers. Thank you to all of you for joining me here today in this important discussion as we now head into this, what many are calling one of the most divisive elections in American history. I want to start for the students here on the panel to give you an opportunity to explain your background. What motivated each of you to become politically involved at such a young age?
It all started because I was really into law and the judicial system, and from there, going to the courthouses, speaking with various attorneys. Eventually I was talking to judges, and from there I went to the state level, and I was able to do an internship at the Capitol. And from there, I learned a lot about the national level of our country's politics, and then eventually the international level. So it just, the gradual, kind of going up, I just found that fascinating.
For me, I got involved in public policy and the legislature just by when I moved here when I was 5 years old, and I didn't know English. So I thought that was a really challenging journey for me, and it instilled this desire to help others who experience the same struggles as I do, or as I did. So I saw this council, LIAC, and I was like, wow, this could be such an amazing vehicle to empower those like me who came to a different state and had to experience a whole different environment of language and education and my experience with it. So I wanted to share that, and I've been super lucky to be surrounded by talented and brilliant individuals who have shared their own challenges and experiences, and now we all collaborate on wonderful legislative priorities, and we have become stakeholders for laws that we promote now. So that's just kind of how, what empowered me to get involved.
And I want to leave this question open to everyone here on the panel to discuss. Do you think that young people have a responsibility to be politically informed and active?
I think it's kind of all over the place. There are some people who are very cynical and disinterested, and it's part of our job as educators to help them, to help cynical young people try and find a reason to become more engaged.
So for our teachers in the room, I guess then, what role do you believe that education, and maybe high school more specifically, should play in fostering civic engagement and creating a sense of political literacy amongst students here at school?
It's one of the first places that students really have a formal conversation about politics. I think at home, the conversation revolves maybe more around ideologies of the politics that their families believe in, but the processes in which that happens and how one gets elected and what does that look like really happens here at the secondary level. And so for us as high school teachers, we are the ones who get to introduce those formalities to students, and we have to do a good job with laying that foundation. Otherwise, we do get cynical people built into the system early on, and we want to try to avoid that.
I think that high school is really critical. It's a time in young people's lives that they often remember vividly, and I know that for many of my students, it may be the last time that I have a chance to have these kinds of conversations in a formal education environment. So I think it's really critical, and it has to be done with respect for differences of opinion. And I think my role is to educate, not to persuade, except to persuade that it's valuable to learn about our system and engage with it.
You bring up conversations that take place in history and in civics classrooms. How do you all feel about political discussions in the classroom setting? Do you think that they are productive? Do you think at times they maybe lead to a deepening of our divides?
I personally, in all of my IB diploma candidate classes, we've done a lot of discussions about various different global issues, and something that I find extremely valuable and necessary is just neutrality. I've been in certain classes where either teachers or educators will kind of slide in their own personal views, and I feel like for people who are still trying to discover what they believe in, that can be very harmful. So I just think neutrality and genuinely just educating about what's going on in our democracy and our world as a whole.
So I'm personally a full-time Running Start student, so my perspective is going to be a little bit different probably. So I've been in one in-person U.S. history class and one political science class, and I think the classroom I experienced more political discourse is probably my U.S. history class, 148, where we discuss more modern world history or modern U.S. history. I saw, so I'm obviously with older people. I'm with older, younger people who are pursuing, after they graduated high school studies. So they seem to respect one another. I feel this environment where you can really speak to what you want. However, my teacher was personally extremely biased, and he would show us a lot of propaganda I think I found to be a little bit disturbing sometimes.
Yeah, you bring up concerns over bias and teachers perhaps spreading propaganda.
Yes.
In your view. Some parents around the country have concerns about what they're calling indoctrination in schools. I'm curious to get your guys' perspectives on this. In your view, what is the role of a teacher in regard to political education?
I think we have to provide the skills and the knowledge for students to understand how to critically think rather than providing our own personal interests. And that can sometimes be difficult, right? As somebody who, right, we're individuals outside the classroom, we have personal interests, but if we can stick with foundational skills and knowledge and teach them how to think versus what to think, then I think we're okay. And that's what we hope that our students do, not just with politics, but with all of our classes here at River.
I want to challenge my students to hold me accountable if they hear me deviating from my stated mission of providing a balanced educational approach. So let me know if there's things that I can improve on or things that I need to do differently. And I think that asking that question and approaching it that way helps them feel like I'm working with them together rather than preaching to them.
Ms. Young, you bring up the aspect of school and shaping students' exploration of politics. I'm curious again for the students in the room, how do you think your personal political ideology has evolved as you've matured, and what do you think is the role of education in that change?
So for me, my political views have evolved. I think, so initially, when I was 14 years old, I was obviously, surrounded by my family, and I think my family has a really big role in shaping my political views, but I think my Congresswoman Marie Gluesenkamp-Perez, who is a Democratic moderate, she has had this really beautiful impact on me, I think. She is ranked, I think, among the top 20 as the most bipartisan congresswoman out there in the nation, and she's really taught me the values of looking at all sides. I can consider myself a Democrat or whatever I decide I view myself as, but it's always wonderful to engage in bipartisanship if you get the opportunity to do so. And then also LIAC is a nonpartisan council, so I feel like I've had such a wonderful experience being surrounded by kids who may not even be on the same trajectory as me. So that's, yeah.
And just to your point, Ashlye, do we think that students here at school are always given the opportunity to explore all sides of a historical or political issue?
You are open to exploring whatever you believe in, and you have to kind of take initiative on that. I think you have to explore articles, and you have to experience things in order to really create your own personal narrative on how you feel about politics.
Yeah, I feel like when I developed my own opinion on politics, and when Ashlye developed her opinion on politics, we were seeking out a lot of extracurricular options, her with LIAC and me with my senator. However, for those students who don't have that opportunity, or they aren't knowledgeable about where to go to find these extracurricular options, I think it's important that we, for the government's role in education is to, especially for teachers, is to educate, again, neutrality, but also to destigmatize, especially at the national level, because something that I was really passionate about and still am is that there's a lot of tension, especially on the national level with the current presidential debate, and destigmatizing that as educators and peers, I think is extremely valuable in helping people who don't have the opportunities to do extracurricular activities like we did regarding politics.
In regard to current events which you bring up, coming up in classroom education, how do we think that the political climate outside of school influences the way that students interact and learn here at River?
Being in the diploma program, surrounded by a lot of intelligent individuals, we all have critical conversations, and I've never had a negative experience with anyone, and everyone's very curious, especially for those that aren't going to be able to vote in the upcoming election, myself included. And I think although we all have varying opinions on how this election is going to go, or our own opinions, I believe everyone's striving for productive conversations.
I do think, I would agree with Abbie. There is this stigma about talking about politics that, right, there are topics that are off the dinner table conversation, right? You're not supposed to talk about politics and religion, and we here at River kind of do the opposite. We talk about religion and we talk about politics, and we hope that we break down some of those barriers that allow for these open, engaging conversations to say, hey, it's okay if we don't agree. Let's find something. I bet if we talked it out, I bet there's something that we can agree on. And sometimes we might have to take a couple steps back, but if we can do that, then maybe those outside polarizations become a little more minimal over time. Right now it's difficult. There's a lot of people worried for different reasons, and if we can do the job of breaking down some of those barriers and saying, well, if you're worried, guess what? Half of the country is worried too, and empathize with both sides, knowing that one way or the other, there's going to be half of the United States that's probably feeling that will feel some sadness come next Wednesday, and regardless of the outcome. And if we can empathize with people, a lot of that will break down some of those polarizing feelings.
Yeah, and you mentioned some of those obstacles that come up in the classroom. Mr. Smith, in your experience as a history teacher, how have you dealt with those kinds of obstacles or challenges when informing students about these controversial topics?
I do think that, saying, I respect you as a person, we have a relationship, we may see this differently, and allow that to be acceptable. It has to be, I think, what we're working towards.
Based on all of your observations, do you think that students here at River are more politically engaged and perhaps young voters in general than they were in previous elections? And if so or if not, why do you think that is?
Looking at 5 to 10 years ago, what do we have now? We have the breaking news at our fingertips. We have social media. We have all of that. And regardless of what is coming in, it is coming in. And so again, going back to the awareness, I think there's so much more awareness out there and involvement, finding a way to figure out some of that misinformation that might be out there. And Mr. Smith and I and the rest of the history team is hoping to break some of that down and how to figure out what is real and what is not and what to do. But I definitely think that our youth are way more involved than they ever were, and it's great. I love to see it.
Yeah, Abbie?
Well, initially, I'm only 17. I can't really attest to the previous years. 4 years ago, I was just in 8th grade. But I honestly, the amount of political engagement that I see among my peers is something I could not imagine being without. And I am grateful and I enjoy seeing political engagement. So I imagine it can be a little difficult to have productive political conversations when people aren't really interested in that. So if it's just going up from here, as you guys are saying, then I'm hoping that political engagement, and I hope that will increase.
Yeah, and then finally, just kind of wrap this up from the teacher's perspective in the room, what do you think is one lesson about democracy that students should take with them throughout their lives?
Engagement looks different for everyone, and upholding that and being an active participant in our democracy is what ensures the growth of our republic and the growth of this great nation, and I hope that people take that to heart.
Okay, that's an inspiring message. Well, thank you to all of you for participating in this discussion. Just ahead, our conversation with a Ukrainian refugee student whose paintings are helping him heal and share his story one brushstroke at a time. We'll be right back. Welcome back. An art student here at River, who is a Ukrainian refugee, is using his works as a canvas for political expression. CR News chief anchor Tyme Sisakvanich is standing outside Broadway Street in downtown Vancouver. Tyme?
Yeah, that's right, Talan. Earlier last month, Andrii Hulevatyi, a Ukrainian refugee student as well as sophomore here at River, had 3 of his paintings displayed at the Art at the Cave Gallery's Politics exhibit here in downtown Vancouver.
Yeah, Andrew, thank you for taking the time to sit with me today to discuss your paintings here and your life. Tell me a little bit about your background and family. You live with your mother and brother here in Vancouver, but you were raised in Ukraine. So what was life like prior to the Russian invasion? До початку війни життя було нормальне.
Ми вчилися, жили спокійно, все було добре. До війни, після війни все як наче рушилось та було неспокійно.
So, how have you adjusted to life here in America, and how has your experience differed from your upbringing in Ukraine?
В Америці набагато більше можливостей в плані навчання та розвитку. В Україні немає такої можливості, та фінанси тут набагато кращі.
What influenced you to pursue visual art initially, and what led you to choose painting as a medium?
З самого дитинства я любив малювати, та мене мама відправила у художню школу. І з першого класу я розвивався, малював та дуже обожнював цю справу.
You know, he had taken years of art school in Ukraine. When he came to United States, to my classroom last year, I immediately saw that he was out of place in my foundation level class. So I showed him my oil paints and I gave him some canvas and I said, just paint. This is the best thing for you right now.
Phelps, who had worked with the Cave Gallery in the past, explained that Hulevatyi was wanting to be a painter and to be recognized for his art, bringing up the politics open call. The category encourages artists to make art, not war, and let their works be a justification to care and engage as the critically important election approaches.
Я їх намалював, щоб показати, що у моїй країні трагедія, війна та постійні тривоги та прильоти у моїй країні дуже хвилювались мене, і це дуже страшно. Мене натякнуло намалювати ці картини також ситуація з моєго життя, коли біля нашої хати у 300 метрах впала ракета.
All three of Hulevatyi's paintings took around 2 months to complete, use oil paint, and are designed with a style closely resembling realism. No War shows a young girl wearing a Ukrainian flag, standing on a road close to damaged missiles and looking into the distance where destroyed houses can be seen. Looking through the pane presents a large, tearful eye that is placed on a blue-skied, yellow wheat field shaped like Ukraine. The dark red flowing down from the top shows bleeding, and the black on the bottom represents darkness, both consuming a once peaceful country. The pupil of the eye shows reflections of chapels, symbolizing prayers to end this violence once and for all. From Peace to War displays another young girl wearing traditional Ukrainian clothes and hairpieces looking at two sides of life. The left showcases one of peace, tranquility, and light, while the right conveys one of violence, darkness, and war.
What does it mean to you that other people have the ability to come see your work? I mean, what do you hope they will take away from this?
Кожна людина, яка побачить ці картини, побачить, що в країні війна, що таке не має бути у 20 столітті, та розкажуть іншим своїм родичам та людям. Коли була перший день відкриття цієї галереї, багато людей сюди прийшло та подивились на мої картини, та декілька підійшли та підтримали мене.
Well, if you put it in perspective, when you're looking at his work and he's 16 years old and he's thinking about an entire nation and what they're going through, it's pretty emotional to think about. I don't think there ever could be enough recognition for what he's attempting to do. With that said, hasn't it been amazing to see the community wrap their arms around him, you know, from our administrators and to our teachers and to this gallery itself, and the people who came and listened to him during his art talk and the opening night. I think that says something about our little town of Vancouver, Washington.
Мені дуже сподобалась ця виставка. Це моя перша виставка. Я хочу продовжувати це робити далі, щоб інші люди, багато людей побачили мої картини та те, що я роблю, розвиватися далі та бути відомим.
And that's all I have for you today. Thank you for your time.
Through Hulevatyi's work, local visitors in the area can get a unique perspective into the devastating effects of war in Ukraine through the eyes of a young, aspiring artist. Talan?
And Tyme, what was the most striking part of Andrew's story to you while you were writing this piece?
Yeah, Talan, what stood out to me the most was that Andrew actually had to endure and experience the horrors. I mean, having a missile fired like 300 meters away, that is just scary to think about.
Yeah, do you think there's a broader impact Andrew hopes to make with his art beyond just spreading awareness of the war?
In terms of broader impacts, I think that Andrew's work encourages students to get out there and speak up against the political issues in our community and around the world.
What an inspiring story Tyme Sisakvanich on Broadway Street in downtown Vancouver for us. Tyme, thank you. That is all we have for this Friday. A reminder that Election Day is this Tuesday and the polls close at 8 p.m. Pacific. If you're eligible, it's not too late to register to vote. You can visit the Clark County Elections Office to vote in person. Your voice matters. I'm Talan Collins. We'll be back soon, no matter who wins the election, because here at CR News, the Rapids report. Go vote. Hey Rapids, thanks for helping us reach 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. If you haven't already, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the CRTV YouTube channel to support content for and by CR students. Thanks for watching.